Well, I just realized I made a big mistake. On the last two episodes that I recorded, I was sharing the screen of the visual aids and didn't think about the fact that if I'm sharing that, I'm not sharing the sound of Spotify playing the podcast. So now I have the video of me watching it and you can't hear anything. I have to figure out if somehow I can attach the sound. It's probably going to be a little bit off, so sorry, those are already posted. So if you experienced that and it was weird, I'm sorry. So I am going to share Spotify now so that you can actually hear what's being said. That would be helpful. That's actually really frustrating. I wanted these to be like, because it's so long, the podcast, right? I just wanted it to be easy. And I was like, I'm not going to edit these. I'm just going to put it up. And now I have to figure out how to edit it in sound. Be so for real, Brittany. Why did I not think about that? Oh, that's so frustrating. But okay, we're moving on. We're fine. At least it was only the first two. At least I thought about that now and not at the end of all of it when I went to edit everything. Because usually I don't go back and play things. I literally thought about it. Okay, so let's listen to their experience at the plantations. Is that something that people do? Like go visit plantations and like learn the history and they teach that? Or do you stay away from it? Like, is that something that people like travel there and make sure that they go and visit that and learn about? Like, I just feel like that would crack my soul in half. All right, let's play this and hear their experience at the plantation.
Musical analysis broken into short, digestible episodes. I'm Cole Kushner.
And I'm Titi Shodia.
All right, welcome to a special
like a huge
episode
chunk
of the
of
Dissect
mascara.
podcast. I am
heck?
here in New Orleans with the co-host of season 6 of Dissect, Titi Shodia.
My best
How you
friend
doing,
lives in
Titi?
New Orleans.
I'm good. How are you?
Well, she has a
I'm
house there.
A
She goes
little.
back and forth.
We were just talking. My voice is a little strained because we went out to a dinner last night that was a little loud, really busy. So, but yeah, no,
that's
it's
how
good.
old we are. Is that
Yeah.
we're our voices are tired from just having a dinner
Yeah.
together. Not
Yeah,
partying
exactly.
in New Orleans.
Yeah, exactly.
Just talking over dinner.
Yeah. So we'll get into why we're here in New Orleans. Like neither you or I live here, but we've kind of traveled here to meet together, and kind of Lemonade and Beyoncé bringing us together in that respect. But yeah, I just wanted to do more of a conversational podcast with you to kind of introduce you to the audience of Dissect. By this point, they've heard you on probably a few episodes. We haven't launched the season as we're recording this, but yeah, likely I've heard you, a couple episodes now, and that's all great. But also wanted to kind of showcase who you are a little bit more, so people can really get to know you beyond just your voice on the podcast.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we're going to kind of just talk over
Oh my
who
gosh,
you are and
my
your background, how we met.
Okay, I got myself situated. Sorry about that.
Beyoncé and Lemonade. And then we'll get into why we're here in New Orleans and kind of describe our experience and what we've been doing the last couple of days. So yeah, I'll just toss it to you, I guess, to just introduce who you are, give us a little bit about your background, because I think most people aren't going to really be familiar with kind of your extensive background. And then we'll kind of go over how we met. But yeah, so tell us a little about yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm Titi Shodia, and I am a first-generation African-American. My parents are from West Africa. My mother's from Ghana. My father's from Nigeria. My educational background is that I got a bachelor's in material science and engineering and a minor in mathematics from Penn State. And then I went on to grad school where I got a PhD in mechanical engineering and material science, and also a master's in electrical and computer engineering.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. So so I don't know what any of that means. So let's give the listeners a little bit of context.
I work for a university, so the way that I understand how much it takes
science,
to get there is
your specialty.
that's
so what's
so
that
much
kind
work.
of detail about?
So growing up, I always thought I wanted to be a chemist because I was really interested in like the composition of things. But I think material science, it takes it kind of a step further into practical applications of chemistry. So like if you think of really anything that you interact with, there was probably a material scientist that was involved in it. So even something like these microphones that we're talking into, there was probably an acoustics engineer that worked on it, but a materials engineer would probably design like kind of like the metal grading and like what it's made of, to make sure that it works optimally. I worked with nanomaterials, so you don't find a lot of nanomaterials in a lot of things, but in everyday things, you can find it in lotion and makeup and things like that. And choosing the correct materials so that things work at the highest level for whatever application that you are using it for. So like even things like a seatbelt, how it's woven together and the material that they use so that if you are in an accident,
I think I'm going to speed this one up since it's not Beyonce related. Can I change
those
the
are
speed?
materials engineering feats.
Yeah, all the stuff like people like me would probably never think about, but I would imagine your view of the world is much different than mine or most people's, because you're kind of, I would assume like you're kind of, you take a different perspective on like what exactly is. It's probably how the way I listen to music is the way that you look at like objects and stuff.
Maybe
absolutely. Like when even in our short conversations that we have about music, I'm like, oh wow,
right here,
like you are definitely a scientist when it comes to that, and an engineer when it comes to that, because I mean you think of it on levels that I never thought of it.
Yeah, and that was kind of the interesting thing about kind of why I wanted to work with you. Like I really like that different perspective, like we were kind of talking about yesterday. Like for me, Dissect is an approach.
Here we go.
It's like it's specifically approach to music, but the Dissect process is really a universal process of like, here's this one thing and let's like really dig into it. Like let's peel back the layers. Let's like find the materials, you know, that are making up this piece that we kind of, you know, someone like you just kind of will listen to and enjoy. But if someone like me is able to kind of decompose the lyrics and tell people why you enjoy it, why is it resonating so much, here's the specific techniques. And I was really interested in like trying, you know, I could have got another musician to work with on Dissect, but that doesn't really interest me because, you know, I wanted the kind of the dynamic and diverse perspective. Even outside the gender and the racial stuff, it was like more about, it was just really interesting to me to have also this like more scientific approach to it too. Yeah, so we could talk a little bit about how we met, but maybe let's talk about your podcast first. So really how I found you in the beginning was your great podcast called Dope Labs.
Yes, Dope Labs is a podcast that I have with one of my best friends. Her name is Zakiya Watley. We met when we were in grad school, when we were both struggling and depressed all the time. But our friendship definitely brought us a lot of joy, and we had a lot of fun. And one of the things that we really loved doing was explaining our research to each other, because she has a PhD in genetics, which I know nothing about, like the biological sciences, and she doesn't really know much about engineering. And so we loved talking to each other about our work, and then we also loved talking to people like at the bar about our work. And when we would go out, we would find that people, when they found out that we were PhD students, that they really wanted to ask a lot of the questions that they've had, like what felt like their whole lives that they didn't get answers for. And they would ask us questions like, you know, what is buoyancy? I don't really get that, like, and things like that. And we could talk about that. And we would find like really fun ways to take sometimes very complex scientific ideas and communicate it to them in a way that they can understand. And so at one point we said, oh, you know, we could do a podcast, you know, because this was before, you know, all the podcasts out. Everybody was saying they wanted a podcast. And then we ended up applying for a sponsored program, and 18,000 people applied. We were chosen as finalists, and then we were one of the 3 winners at the end. So we got some money to start, and then Dope Labs was born.
That's very cool. Me and my best friend did a podcast for a little bit.
It's kind of a kindred spirit in terms of like what Dope Labs is doing and what Dissect is doing, which is essentially the same thing. You guys are taking scientific topics, finding a common entry point, usually pop culture reference, to like get into this, you know, educational aspect of the show, but doing it in a way that applies to everyone, that everyone can understand. And I feel like that's really what I'm trying to do with Dissect, is like, here's music that you love, that you listen to all the time. Here's why you love it. Here's some of the technical things of why you love it, and how all these pieces essentially fit together to create this larger thing. So I think that was also another kind of reason, like, you know, to be honest, like I don't really know the moment, like when I thought of you, because I was looking for someone to bring in. I knew I wanted to co-host this season. It was kind of just the next step, kind of the next evolution of the show. Like last season, we had Femi as a co-writer who did an amazing job. And I thought I wanted to do something similar for this season. I love what Femi brought to the table, but I also wanted to take that a step further and get another voice on the show. And Lemonade, as we're going to talk about, is so obviously rooted in an experience that is not mine, that I thought it was equally important to get another voice on the show specifically for this season. So yeah, I was trying to think about like the moment that I thought of you, but really, I guess we met first so I listened to Dope Labs since the first episode, really. And I was always a fan. I love that I was with Spotify.
I want to hear about the
Spotify.
Plantation.
And then we got to meet pretty briefly, but we met in, where was that? Palm Springs?
Palm Springs. Yeah.
So Spotify had like I don't know what they call it, an offsite.
Yeah.
So
I just don't have a lot of time and I have so much to do, so it feels like
came and did
Hearing
some
about
activities,
them
and
is
you
just
guys,
not
Dope
something
Labs,
I can
was
spend my
you and
time
Takia
on
were
right now.
like the featured speakers.
Yeah, we
kind
had
of
a panel.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh shit, they're here. Like, I definitely got to introduce myself.
I don't
So
want to
I
skip
introduced
any of it.
myself
I
at
want to
lunch
hear it,
briefly,
but I'm speeding it
and
up
then you
more.
said that you had
Sorry if
listened to
this
Dissect
bugs you
before.
guys.
So that was cool. Yeah, and then like
You're making it seem like I was cool about it. I was like, I am such a big fan. I'm such a big fan.
Yeah, that's cool. You're wearing a Dissect hat, I remember, because you're giving out Dissect hats there. But yeah, so when I was like kind of searching around for people to bring in, as soon as I thought of you, I was like, oh, perfect. Like, and I didn't really know why, but like, I just knew it was going to work. And I think we kind of talked about this yesterday, but like when you listen to someone's podcast, like you kind of feel like you know them a little bit. I've been listening to you guys for so long that I just kind of like trusted you from the get-go, and I kind of knew your approach and your tone and everything like that.
I like
so,
her. I'm glad
that's
that
really
he
why I
chose
reached out,
her.
and like, that's why how fast forward a few months, and that's how we are here. But so yeah, I think we can kind of get into Beyonce a little bit. I want to start with just like your relationship with Beyonce. Like, when did you start listening to her? What your kind of general thoughts are about
He
her?
said
and your kind of evolution
relationship
over
with
the
her,
years.
and I was like, she knows
I mean,
her.
I think for me, Beyonce is someone who I don't even remember life without Beyonce. It's hard to even like conceptualize that there was a time in my life that Beyonce was not out and making music. I feel like she's been ever
I
present.
love hearing
Destiny's
this
Child was like huge
perspective.
for me and my sisters and my friends growing up
let's
because they were a
unspeed
Black
it.
female
I
group,
care about
and they were
this.
really kind of like breaking a lot of barriers. It felt like, because they were not just doing R&B, they were also being featured with rappers and things like that, and they were just performing to the next level. Where I think prior to Destiny's Child, a lot of Black female groups, they weren't really dancing and singing, but they took like performance to like the next level, which I really enjoyed. When Beyonce split off from Destiny's Child, it didn't even feel like a breakup. Like some bands, you feel like it's like awful. I feel like everybody knew that Beyonce would eventually branch off, but I don't think anybody could have anticipated that Beyonce would have become Beyonce, who she is now. Where Beyonce, it's like no one can name their child Beyonce.
I knew her as Destiny's Child, and once they went solo,
like if you name your child Beyonce, that's a bold move, and that child will probably not live up to that name. And that's gonna.
I knew Destiny's Child, and I liked them, but not a ton. It was just a girl group, and I didn't really care. And back then, I remember. I could be wrong, but this is what I'm remembering, that like there would be groups, and then those groups would break off and do solo stuff, but the solo stuff was never good. It was always the group stuff. So I would be like, once they went solo, I didn't care to follow them. So that's what I thought Beyonce was. I thought that she was breaking off to do solo, and then it wouldn't matter to me. I was like, well, Destiny's Child is the better stuff, and I don't even really listen to them, so why would I listen to her solo stuff? Like, I had no idea that she was becoming Beyonce. Like, missing that, the fact that I could have grown up with this. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't go back and change anything, because this experience has been absolutely incredible. Doing it all so close and seeing the progress so quickly, it's unbelievable. So I definitely wouldn't change anything. But it's also like, how did I miss it? It's crazy.
It'd be sad. It's like naming your child Madonna or something. Like, she's an icon. And I feel like every album that comes out, I'm never disappointed. And there's always so much range, and you could see like her growing with each stage of her life, from going from being a teenager to being a woman, being a married woman, having children. Like, she incorporates every stage of her life into her music. Like, there's no huge disconnect that you can see with some artists, where they have different stages of their life, but they have people that are writing their music for them, and so they just sing the lyrics that are there. But Beyonce, I think she makes a very conscious effort to show the progression in her music. Even like, when she got married, then it became like she talked more about like her sexuality and things like that, and so that's been really cool to see.
I think that's like, I wouldn't say a similar experience, but I've listened to Destiny's Child. I used to like, it's kind of always a guilty pleasure of mine. Even like, I remember that song.
That's cute.
What's that song? You Must Not Know About Me.
Yes.
What's that song called?
Irreplaceable.
Oh yeah. I was obsessed with that song. Like,
you had some feelings.
I did. Like, I can't remember the year that came out, but it was like that was one of my most played songs on iTunes. I know for sure that year, and it was such a contrast from everything else I listened to. But I loved like Soldier. I loved like all those songs. Like, it was, even though it was a little bit outside of what I normally listen to, for whatever reason, I just really gravitated towards her. But I wouldn't say that I was like a super fan at all. Not really until like, I guess four self-titled and then Lemonade really kind of sealed it for me. I would say Lemonade specifically, because for me, like, I always try to, I just naturally, I guess, like, view people from like historical perspective. And Beyonce has used, I don't know if I would call it a formula, but essentially every artist that I really, really admire do the same thing. They get incredibly popular with more traditional pop music of that era, and then once they have a massive following, they flip it and they use their voice and their platform to expand on the genre, to innovate, to express things that haven't been expressed in that style before. Like, Bob Dylan did the same thing. He got popular with folk music, and he turned to electric, and that was a big controversy at the time, but it also pushed boundaries in that genre of music. And same thing about the Beatles. They came in as essentially boy band pop music, and then flipped that. Radiohead did the same thing, where they had, they were the grunge alternative rockers that
the
then
Beatles started out as boy band pop music. I don't believe that. I've heard, my dad is obsessed. I mean, I believe it because he just said it, and I know that he knows better than me. My dad is obsessed with the Beatles, and I have listened to them my entire life. I'm gonna need to go to like their first album. How do I even know which one was first? Let's see. There's probably gonna be so many.
2, 3, 4.
Okay, well, I know that. Is this what...
I've lost her now for sure. I won't see
This just sounds like the Beatles to me. Is this what they're talking about that they consider pop, or is there like something before?
girl before you go now. Can't run around 'cause I'm not free.
Okay, I mean, it sounds like the Beatles. That's crazy to me to call the Beatles pop.
That then became this really experimental, innovative electronic music. So Beyonce to me has done that. I would say the music has stayed relatively safe, or just more, it's not as experimental as the people that I just named, but I would say just like Lemonade the film, for instance, is such an innovation to the genre, and I really think it's unmatched in contemporary
That's how I
history.
felt
all
up
that is
until this
encompassed in
point.
this
I
film.
didn't think her writing
and to
and
me,
stuff,
that is, like,
it was
that
good.
gets
I
my
loved
ultimate
it. I
respect, is someone
connected
that is
with
willing
it. It
to
was...
use their
I
platform, take
loved
risks,
it.
and ultimately like expand boundaries. Kendrick Lamar
But
is
this
another
is
great
like a
example of that.
whole
And so that's kind of how I view
huge
Beyonce. That's really why I was interested in doing Lemonade, really since the day it premiered. Unfortunately, it wasn't on Spotify
Yeah.
for a few years, so I was like, not that anyone told me not to do it, but I just didn't think it would make sense for a Spotify podcast to do to an album that's not on Spotify. It
Right.
just logically didn't make a lot of sense. But the second it came on Spotify, it was the next season, hands down. It was so easy to choose.
You know what else Beyonce's done? She has introduced the surprise album.
Yep, for sure.
And now folks think that they can do it, but not everyone can do that, because
Very
Beyonce,
rare.
she's Beyonce, so she
Yeah.
can't say, "Oh, I'm coming out with an album today," and it'll go platinum.
Yeah.
But then a lot of people who are not Beyonce are trying that, and it's not working
No,
out so
definitely.
well.
Yeah, she definitely innovated that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not very
and that
many people
utilized,
can do
I think
that.
she saw, or team saw, or whoever saw, like, it's way more exciting. Like, now that information travels so fast,
Yeah.
like especially with the Beyonce, it's rolling out an album for a month versus dropping it and getting everyone excited and this hype. We were just talking about like trying to get new Yeezys this morning. It's like the same thing. It's like you're like sitting on your computer, like the moment it comes out, and you're trying to get it, and like people just love the hype and the excitement and the rush of that.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh shit, new Beyonce.
Yeezys
like,
is
it's so
Kanye,
genius that they
right?
kind of figured that out.
Yeah.
I mean, this was years ago now. But yeah, so I don't know. I guess like we can talk a little bit about Lemonade specifically. I guess I'm interested to hear your kind of first experience with it, if you watched it on HBO that night, or if you didn't. Like, what was your
Oh, I
first
love
experience?
this.
What was that
I'm
whole
so
Lemonade experience
happy
like
that I
when
listened to
it
this.
first
I
came out?
love this
So
perspective.
I think I'm strange when it comes to how I consume music, because I like to wait till stuff dies down a little bit so that I'm not influenced by all the hype around it. So when it came out, I was like, okay, I know I have to see this, but I want to wait a little bit and not be just a part, like feel like I'm a part of the hype. And so I waited, and my sisters had watched it, and they were just dying. And so I think I waited like a couple weeks, and even a couple weeks later, it was still like the biggest things on the tip of everybody's tongue. But I watched it, and I just thought, oh my gosh, this is unlike anything I've ever
I'm the
seen
opposite. I want to
in
listen
my
the
life. It almost made me
moment
feel like,
it's released, so I get my own opinion before I see what everyone else
the first time I
says.
saw Thriller and how it was kind of like this whole long story, I thought that was so good.
Thriller's a story.
And
I can't wait to do Michael
it felt
Jackson.
kind of like that, where I was like, this is something that no one has done before, and it just really shows her, not just her vocal range and her ability to act, which we know that she can do, but it also showed her vulnerability, and it really humanized Beyonce for me, where before it was like Beyonce's untouchable. She's not someone that you feel like you can't be around because she seems like a fun person, but it was just like, wow, Beyonce really went through a lot. And she's just like the rest of us. Like, she showed a very, very soft and vulnerable side in Lemonade. So I thought
This
it was
is
really
where
special.
I felt like
And
she's
it was
so
kind of like how we talk
relatable.
about podcasting, where you just feel like you know
It
the
flipped
person.
a switch
and I feel like
in
I
my
know her
head.
a lot better after Lemonade.
Yeah, that's kind of how we touched on in the intro of the season, was like there was an elevator video, which in retrospect just seems so trivial, because the way that she flipped that narrative and like was like, oh, you guys want it to be this like stupid gossip thing, like here's what it actually is, like here's what my experience was, and I'm going to share it to you in a very powerful and expressive way, but also be super vulnerable about it, and then make the people that were really trying to kind of spin that gossip wheel just like look really insensitive and like just petty, these are kind of real. I talk a lot about the show over the years about like having empathy, generally speaking, but a lot of the time having empathy for these figures who we kind of put on these pedestals only to kind of like see them fall. Like, we love to see as a public, we love to see we love to lift people up, and we equally love to like to tear them down. I feel like the elevator video, like Beyonce was pretty flawless, pun intended, up until that point, kind of. I mean, like there was here and there rumors, but like that really solidified this moment where you could definitely see some people trying to like start that spin, and like it took her 2 years to do, but like she came with Lemonade and dismantled it completely.
It's really sad how people love to watch them fail. Right now, I feel like Justin Bieber, he's on the edge. Like, I'm worried about him. I think like it's reminding me of like Britney Spears, and it just, people are like thriving on it, and they're in their comments, him and Haley, being so mean, and I'm not in any way on their side or anything, but I'm just like, why do we have to do that? Like, we hear this music, it makes us think what we want to think. Why can't we think that and discuss it without going to their page and attacking them and pushing them? Like, he's already, you can see that he's in pain and he needs to do some healing and some soul searching, and to push someone it's like, it's just evil. I just don't understand the whole thinking that we have the right to say or think. I don't know. I don't know how I'm trying to explain this, but I just think it's crazy how the media is, how people are, how everyone thinks they have a right to this information. Like, yeah, I'm nosy. I want to know, but I'm not going to go bug them about it. I'm not going to make them feel bad. It's horrible.
Yeah, it almost made you feel foolish, like if you were trying to become a part of that,
Yeah.
like the rumors and trying to make it something way bigger than what it was and gossipy.
Yeah.
You made, I think, all those people look really silly.
Yeah, I'm
Good
curious.
for
Like,
her. I love how
I would think
Beyonce
our experience of
claps
Lemonade is
back.
probably a lot different. I would say and this is me. I guess there's probably two components here. One, I just look at things historically, analytically, like what does this mean for music genres and those kind of questions. But also, like, I'm a white male from the suburbs, so like my experience of seeing Lemonade, I would think is much different than yours. So I'm wondering, like, what if you could touch on maybe that, like I said, the identity aspect of Lemonade, how Black females are they're featured throughout the entire thing, obviously, for the majority of the time. And just like, I guess, I'm just curious about seeing that representation, like what you thought about that.
Yeah, I think it was really powerful what she did with all the visuals in Lemonade. I think that, of course, it was deliberate, showing Black women in pre-Civil War attire and in slave quarters and things like that. I think to show the resilience of Black women, and that to kind of juxtapose these really beautiful Black women and these really beautiful in this really beautiful attire in front of a slave quarter, to kind of show how even through a lot of pain that they can still survive, and just to remind us of where we came from to be where we are now and the effects of slavery on us as a people. I think that she wanted to show that the resilience that we have now in our day-to-day is something that is not new. It's not something that we are just learning. It's something that is kind of ingrained in us and in our DNA and in every fiber of us to persevere and to be strong. And to come out on the other end better than we were before, and to pass that strength on generation to generation. I think that another major thing is Black pain, and it's how it's perceived by white culture, or like by the rest of the world. Because I mean, there's been a lot of studies that have come out that have said that from lay people to people in the medical profession, all perceive Black people in general to have a higher tolerance for pain, that they can endure more, and that they think that it's just a part of who we are, when really it's not a part of who we are. It is a product of our exposure to brutality.
Yeah.
And I think that was
actually, so my whole life I've thought that I understood what Black people go through, not like in a way that I can really understand how it feels, but in a way that I know that they're not treated fairly. I know that they have to be afraid of police. I know, like, all of these things that they grow up and, like, they meet someone and they have to wonder, like, are you racist? Are you someone I can trust? Like, it's always there. It's a constant thing that you're having to think about, which I think naturally makes you so much stronger, because what a horrible thing to have to wonder if, because of the way that you're born, people are thinking certain things, or, I thought I understood. The day that I realized that I understood, but not to the magnitude that it is, was actually, there's two things. One, the one I was originally going to say, is my friend called me one day, and her car had broken down on the side of the road, and she was like, "Can you come get me?" So I went and I picked her up, and it was on the freeway. So she's pulled over on the freeway. I pull over behind her. She gets out, gets in my car, and she is shaking. And I was like thinking she was scared because she's on the side of the road and there's cars flying by, and that's scary. And so I thought she was just like upset that her car broke down, scared that people were going to hit her. Like, I thought that was what was happening. And then talking to her, I realized she was afraid that a cop would pull over and talk to her first before I got there. And she is just naturally afraid of that situation. For me, if I'm pulled over on the side of the road and a cop pulls over, I'm like, thank goodness, someone who can help me. Maybe I can explain what's going on. Can I leave my car here? Like, let me get answers. She was terrified that they would even show up. And that was like a light bulb moment for me. Like, I don't have to sit and live in that fear of thinking the worst that could happen in a situation that's already crappy. And that, like, it broke my heart. It was eye-opening. The other thing was, I was dating someone, like, just barely. I didn't know him very well. I went to go visit him. He lived a few hours away from me. He moved like right after we met. So I went to go visit him, and he started, we were in the car, and he was like, "I saw you posting pictures with that Black woman." And I was like, yeah, so, and then he starts talking about, this is like years and years ago, so I don't remember exactly, but he was basically saying that it's horrible that people are mixing blood because it's watering down our blood and bringing disease into our blood when we're mixing it with that. Like, I could not believe the words that were coming out of this man's mouth. Okay. And I was just like, you realize my kids aren't white, right? Because my kids, they're not black, but their dad's from Venezuela. So we definitely mixed some blood there. And he was like, yeah, it's fine. I'm not racist or anything. I'm fine with that. I'm just saying it's bad that they're mixing the blood and it's better to keep it whole and to like keep it white. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And then I was staying in a hotel with him to stay there. And so I didn't really speak up. Not even really. I like pushed back a little and I said things like that, but I didn't fully go off on him. I was scared. I was staying there. I wasn't near my house. I couldn't just go home. He was the one driving. I was just like uncomfortable and scared. And we went back to the hotel and he was like, he wanted to go down to the lobby and get water. And I'm like, well, there's glasses right here. I can get you some water. And he was like, are you kidding me? I don't know if an N word has drank out of those glasses. I have never been so shocked in my life. I could not believe. Like, it was like KKK was sitting right there. Like, that's what they think. That's how they think. That's literally what he was doing. And I was mind blown that I was in this hotel room with a man who clearly I didn't know at all. And I was very uncomfortable, very afraid. I went to sleep. The next morning, I got up and I drove home immediately. I cried the entire drive home for hours because I thought that I liked this person enough to go and trust him to stay with him. And I didn't know anything about him. It was another eye opening moment for me of like, I got to be more careful. That was like when I first started dating after my divorce. But that was just another moment of like, racism is not far in the past. It is current and happening, and this is what Black people have to deal with every day of their life, is wondering if someone they're speaking to was like that man. And it was disgusting to me. I could not believe. So those two experiences were just like crazy to me. And then there's a third. I'm going to tell you, these are the three like things that it makes you learn, right? And I try to take away from it. So the other thing that happened was my daughter, when she was in kindergarten or first grade, it was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And my daughter had her teacher pull her up in front of the class because she was the only brown kid in the class. And she was like, we're grateful for Martin Luther King because if it wasn't for him, she wouldn't be able to be in this class with us because she would have to go to a different school and we wouldn't be able to be integrated. Like telling the kids that thanks to him, she can be here with us. And my daughter came home that day crying and she was just like, wondering why she was pulled up and she was told that she was different because she thought she was white. Like we had never talked about it. Like her dad is brown. He's very clearly brown. I'm white, but she didn't know that she was different. And she was only 5 years old, you know? So wasn't anything that we thought about, but she was just crying. She was like, why am I different? And just, she's basically looks white. She's not even like, it's just, these things make me realize this is something that Black people have to deal with constantly. Like those are my only three experiences. I mean, my ex-husband obviously had stories and experiences and I experienced racism for him, but those were the three experiences that were close to my heart, that affected me, that were like, wow, this is not okay. And the fact that I only have three makes me so privileged. Like I've not directly obviously had anything impact me, but just it's just so sad. It's just so sad. And anyway, I'm just gonna stop there. But
was something that she really shined a very bright light on, where it's like we are not immune to pain. We experience the same pain that everyone else does, but we have developed ways to get through it. And those are the things that we were taught by our mothers, our grandmothers,
and you shouldn't have to.
All the way back to our African ancestors that were enslaved and brought to the U.S.
Yeah. And she does that in a way, I'm just thinking about my own experience with it, in a way that's both specific and universal. Like I've learned so much through this album about other people's experiences, specifically Black female, but also just like I've learned more about the history of slavery, the more about all the things that if you just do a little bit of research on all these allusions throughout the album, like this is really a blueprint for an education.
Mm-hmm.
But also so that's like kind of the specific aspect. The universal aspect, like she did it in such a way that like there is this kind of universal triumph of the human spirit almost, and it's like, of course we have to get specific about who it affected and the types of people that it affected, but also like I look at it as like this triumph of the human spirit, and the resilience of that. And so that's again like why the film resonates so much with me on a personal level, because there is all these. It's like this dual experience of the specific and the universal that I thought she did incredibly well. Up next, Titi and I talk about our experience visiting the sugar plantations in Louisiana. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. So yeah, I guess that kind of gets us into like why
she did amazing because it is very universal. I listened to it and didn't hear any of these deeper things and loved it, had a whole emotional experience with it. And now realizing how much more there is to it is unbelievable. It's unbelievable that she's made it so universal and so personal at the same time.
We're here in New Orleans. As we talk about on the episodes, Louisiana specifically is featured, I guess, in the majority of the film. I don't know what percentage, but it's pretty much almost all of it. So we are here to, I guess specifically we traveled to the plantations of Louisiana, the sugar plantations that run along the Mississippi River that are featured in Lemonade. So yesterday we went to the Oak Valley plantation, which is not featured in the Lemonade film, but it's essentially along the same path that all these plantations lay out side by side basically with each other. We went to the Evergreen plantation, which is featured in the slave quarters of Lemonade. That's where they're filmed mostly. And then we went to Destrehan plantation, where they're pictured in the trees. There's some slave quarters there as well. So we took some tours. We explored just the sites. And I don't know, like I guess we can just get into like the experience of it. I guess we can just talk generally about just some of the feelings that you had when we first stepped onto the plantations. I don't think you had been on a plantation before, so just kind of curious about what was kind of going through your mind as we were walking around.
That'd be hard.
Yeah, it was really, for me, it was really heavy because as a Black person, you can't help but think about the hundreds or thousands of people who were enslaved on those plantations and the lives that were lost and the blood that was spilled and the tears that were cried and just all of the awful experiences. So walking in the slave quarters and just trying to imagine what that life is like was really sad. At some of the places at all the plantations, I think they try and list the names of all of the enslaved that were there. Wow. I think they try to be deliberate about how they refer to the enslaved as the enslaved, because I think now we've come to this new stage when we talk about the history of slavery in America, where we don't refer to people as slaves, we refer to them as the enslaved, so that it puts the onus on the colonizer or the captor, and which I really appreciated that those little things like that. But I think taking the tours, all the tours were mostly white people. I think that was interesting because while I'm kind of trying to digest all of these things, I'm also listening to some of the stuff that they're saying. And we went into one slave quarter, which was like an actual slave quarter that had that was still standing and that they try and keep all together so that people can experience it. And as soon as we walked in, one white woman said, "Oh, well, at least they had a fireplace." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, white guilt is real, and she really wanted to make it seem like, I guess in her mind, she feels guilty about slavery, and she wanted to make it seem like it wasn't that bad. But it was just like so frustrating because you're looking at this home that at some points of the year probably had about, what they said, upwards of 14 people living in it. And it was, how big would you say that place was? It wasn't very big. It's probably the size of a large bedroom. And I was just like, who cares if they had a fireplace? There's also, the beatings, the whippings, the separation from their family, the nonstop working all year round. But so those types of things were frustrating. And it's just like, when you think about the children who were born enslaved, and then the children that they have and things like that, you can absolutely see how it affects the mindset of a people and how they view life and how they view themselves. And it puts into perspective, like even present day, how Black people move and shake in society, and why, and I don't want to speak as, the voice of all Black people, or like Black people are not a monolith, but it definitely makes sense why we feel the way that we feel about certain situations and why we behave certain ways, like with code switching and things like that, why we do those things, because it's just a part of us. And I think that is another thing that Beyoncé was trying to do with Lemonade, but it's not even just like a social point where it's like philosophical, where you would think, if your great grandmother said this to your grandmother and it's passed down from generation to generation, but now there's this
is actually really interesting to me too, because I've seen situations where Black people are triggered about certain things, where in my mind it seems like it was something so small that they made a huge deal, like they snapped and like really like yelling, slamming things, like it. I've seen them really get triggered. And while I understood, because what they were triggered by, they had a right to be, I don't want to say because it's not my place, but I've seen that, and it's interesting to hear her, like, when she hears someone say, at least they had a fireplace, like, that's appalling that someone would say that out loud, but I also could understand that they're trying to find, like, any good, like, at least they weren't cold. Like, I would hope that the it's not them, like, she thinks that it's white guilt and trying to feel guilty about what their ancestors have done, and I honestly, I don't know that white people are that connected to our ancestors. I'm not. I don't think of like white history as a thing. I've never cared. I don't know anything about history. But it's interesting to see that perspective, because I think that they go through life with that like so on their mind that when someone says something, it just is a lot easier to be triggered. And it's making it make a lot more sense that they think differently about things because of everything that they have had to go through, their ancestors have had to go through, that they learn about it, they care about it because it still affects them today. It White people having slaves does not affect me today. Like, I don't feel guilt for that, for being white, because I don't think about them at all. I don't care about them. They're the past. And I think that that is a very, very privileged thing, that I don't have to think about them. So all of those things where I've seen people and wondered, like, what took you from like 0 to 5,000 so quickly? It's not that they got there so quickly. It's that they're already living at 2,000 and then they just went up a little because something really offended them. So this is just very interesting.
Science that is coming out that is showing that there is socio-environmental effects on the DNA level from generation.
I just want to mention that I am being very, very open and honest about my experiences and like how I think as a white woman. And I'm not always going to be right. I do not want to offend anybody in any way at all. If I say something that maybe I'm misspoken, or if I say something that like upsets you, I would love for you to be honest and tell me that, because I am truly trying to learn, and that's why I'm being so honest and expressing my perspective and my experiences, because I know that by saying that, like, I'm learning. I'm not just trying to get through it to get through Beyoncé. Like, this, I care about this. My best friend, the woman that I care about more than any other human on this planet other than my children, she is black, and this is how she has had to grow up and live, and I've known that as like on a very basic level, but this feels like getting to know my best friend more, and it's genuinely just, it's heartbreaking to me. So if I say anything, like, please, 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 please tell me what I said, help me learn from it. I am just being honest and saying my thoughts without really trying to filter myself. So I just want to put that out there. I have every single good intention. So I would love to learn from anything. So
to generation. So essentially what Beyonce is saying is also being supplemented with actual science to show it's what they're calling in the scientific community is weathering. And they did this study that went from like 1985 to 2016, where they studied people from multiple cities, white and black, to see their biological age and then their DNA age, or how it affects their body. And so how social, environmental, and then racial discrimination, how it affects them. And black people are upwards of 6 years older than their white counterparts. And so when you think about that, and you think about things like women when they have a child, and we know that when you get to your mid-30s, that's when it's like a little bit more risky of a pregnancy. So imagine a black woman that is my age, 32, thinking about having a child, and her body, because of this weathering effect, is actually 38.
wow.
So that's why we see that the mortality rate for black women who are having a baby is a lot higher than white women of the exact same age. And those things can be overlaid in different categories. And so it's really phenomenal when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, Beyonce even touches on like infidelity is what word am I looking for? Not infidelity.
Now I don't know the word.
Like when they infertility.
Infertility. Infertility. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a topic that is woven throughout Lemonade, but is never specifically kind of blatantly said. But once you kind of dig into the details, it's there. But no, I mean, all that is really interesting. And again, that's exactly why I love your perspective, because you bring things to the table that I would never have known, that scientific aspect. I mean, when I hear it, it makes sense, like, you know what I mean? But to know that there's science now that is starting to prove these things we've kind of known or hypothesized or thought or talked about are being shown on a scientific level is pretty fascinating. Yeah, I mean, the experience.
I'm really grateful that I have started to care about history, because so the book that I'm reading goes over both Black history and white. It's just the history of the United States. So right now the chapter I'm on is about slavery. And the only reason that I even started to care, I never cared before because to me, in my mind, history was wars. And I was just like, we're so far past wars. That's never going to happen again. Who cares? And then this year happened, and I'm like, maybe it's important for me to be educated and understand the history and what led there and what they did about it. Specifically, what they did about it. Like, hearing all of this is making me more excited to get into all of that because it's so much more important than I ever thought. And I have never cared about my ancestors because it hasn't affected me. It's just such a different experience that I've lived, and that's really kind of unbelievable to me. I'm very excited to get through that book, to learn all the things. I'm really trying to educate myself, but basically I want to be able to have conversations with people who think differently than me, and I want to be able to make good points and talk about history and talk about things like that. Over the last few months, it's just become really important to me. So this is like pushing me in that direction of like, wow, there's so much that I just don't know, and I really want to study and I really want to learn.
Experience for me, I guess, like it was definitely heavy. It was, I obviously thought about the enslaved experience, but you also just being human, you can't help but think about yourself, and it's like, as like a white male, like I just kept picturing myself, what if I was born here, this color, this gender, in this time period, like what would I be like? And it was like, part of you wants to say no, I'd be that person that like I'd be going against the grain, and I would be like, but then part of you is like, statistically that's not true. Actually, like it's like I think about that with like, even when I think about like Nazi Germany, like what if I was born in that era as a German in Nazi Germany? Would I be that small percentage that was rebelling, or would I be like the 99% of the people that kind of, even if they disagree, they're going along with it? Because
that's another thing that right now, when you ask yourself, if I lived in Germany, which side would I have been on? Would I have followed? And I think right now a lot of people are showing which side they would be on and what they would have done. And I'm proud of what side I'm on because I feel like I can say I would not have gone along with that. But that one's easier to say that I wouldn't have done it because it was something that gradually happened, and they didn't grow up thinking, oh, these people are horrible. Someone convinced them that they were and convinced them that they were doing the right thing. But slavery, if I was born during that time, would I have done anything? I don't know, because it's not like one person making it seem like Black people are bad. It's literally been ingrained in them. That's what they've been taught. That's what they think is normal. So if I was raised that way, like I believe the way I believe because of how I was raised. But if I was raised by people who owned slaves, would I have owned slaves? That's like wild to think about because it's like I can't fathom even considering, like even knowing someone who owns a slave, or be like, I would move states if it was something that happened. Like I am so unbelievably far from that. But to think that if I had been born at that time, there's a good statistical chance that I would have owned a slave. That is unbelievable. Ugh.
Fear for life or whatever it was. It's like those are the kinds of things that I was trying to grapple with, and then it becomes this whole, like, at least in my mind, it becomes this more like existential thing of like, who are you at the core? Like how much of your environment affects you? How, to what extent does, how long does, history, time and place, parents, all that, like how does that all like kind of work into the fabric of who you are? And would you be different, or would the environment be so strong that you just kind of fell in line? Like, and I still really haven't even, I'm kind of thinking this out loud as I'm talking. Like I haven't really came to any conclusion about that, but that's kind of the things that was going along in my mind. And just, I guess like being victim of circumstance at some point, like the bad luck of being Black in that era, like all that stuff I was just kind of thinking about that. There's some like really, like I teared up when I saw the restraints for children. Like Jesus, that was like, that was a brutal moment. Because I obviously have kids, and you just can't help but think of like, again, going that same train of thought, like what if my kid was Black and born into this, and then you're seeing them like putting restraints, those restraints were like 2 inches across. So it's like they're for these like 3-year-old children. It's like Jesus. But yeah, so it was like, and then there's like,
I didn't know that. It makes sense, but I have only ever thought of slaves as adults or like teens. I never thought about like little children. I don't know what I thought. I cannot imagine having a child, and like it's hard enough to be enslaved, but to watch your child be put put into shackles like that, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's literally just because of the way you were born. Oh, this is like really hurting my heart. I cannot.
This whole juxtaposition thing that was happening, like there was these huge, like so much of like, there's all these status symbols of wealth that we kept seeing across all three plantations.
Right.
Like all the big houses were these like just giant symbols of wealth and authority. And it was like, there's so much posturing because one of them was like from the outside looks very grand.
Yeah.
And then when you got inside, it was like really small and narrow. And like, it was just such a weird contrast because I guess apparently this owner didn't have as much money as some people did. So it was like, he wanted that facade of status and wealth, but it wasn't actually all the way there.
Yeah.
But then it's like the obvious contrast of like the big houses to the slave quarters. It was like, that was such a visual.
I kind of felt like I'm going to throw up.
Just
I
a
don't
very
like
potent
that.
image of like the contrast between the experiences in this place. And also like just even like the weather and the surroundings were so beautiful. Open spaces, these beautiful trees, but then it's like, despite all that environmental beauty, you know, this place was just like living hell for some people.
Honestly.
And it was,
because people, I think a lot of people loved the Virginia live oaks with the Spanish moss, and they're very quintessential Louisiana, I guess. And as I'm looking at them and I'm watching people kind of like taking pictures in front of them and smiling, I'm like, how many people were hung from these trees? Like, and that's really all I could think of when I see the Spanish moss. It's so beautiful, but it's almost like the branches of the trees are like crying. And so it's just like a symbol of a lot of pain. Like even though it's beautiful, there's a lot of pain like in the roots of that tree. And so it was really, really sobering.
And people get married.
Yeah, I think that's why those trees are like featured in Lemonade so prominently. I think they're this great representation of that, really what she's trying to convey, how she said bruised but beautiful. Like it's like those trees are witnesses, basically. They're living witnesses of what happened here, and they kind of encompass both sides of the story. You know, they persist on through
I don't think
time,
I could handle
but also
going
they
to a
were
plantation.
places of great tragedy. So, yeah, I mean,
I
there's a
would
number
definitely
of
throw up
that
because I really feel
really
sick
thought
right
about
now.
the landscape and kind of some of the objects of these times, and really, I thought used them in very powerful and beautiful ways, really representative. And it was really cool to just be here, and I just thought that was kind of important for us to do. Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I mean, I guess I approach each season as like a opportunity for education. You know, like I don't know a lot about these artists or like not, or these specific albums. I kind of like know they're good. I know that they have some things like that are interesting, but like until you really follow each thread, you know, you really can use great works of art like Lemonade as like a blueprint for an education. And like to me, coming here was like one of the biggest things we could do to like test that idea. It's like, okay, what happens if we actually go to these places that are featured, that are so prominent, and what are the types of things that we can learn? You know, I don't know about you, but I probably would have never been here if it weren't for Lemonade, right? And
Absolutely.
it's like I want to have the experience that we had yesterday, but yeah, if you follow these threads enough, like they really offer, you know, a really great education to the things, at least definitely from my experience, that are so different from my experience. They can really at least help you understand the experience of someone else. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, did you have anything else that came to mind yesterday as we were like walking through, or anything that comes to mind?
I think one of the things that stood out to me was to go back to the Spanish moss. One of our tour guides, he was saying that Spanish moss doesn't like naturally grow on the live oaks. They're not a parasite. They're I don't remember the word.
So they're like a living breed.
Yeah, they're in the air. Yeah. It's in the air, and then they attach to the trees, and then they grow from there. And I was like, what a beautiful metaphor for, you know, racism, where it is not something that is growing from the tree of our culture, but it's in the air and it affects all of us. Yeah. And so I was like, I thought it was like really poetic in that moment. I was just like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think that's something that Beyoncé is really trying to do. I mean, the quote that we have talked about a lot, almost probably every episode, really, we quote, you know, that saying that she wanted to show the ongoing effects of slavery on Black love, Black relationships, and just like the invisible thing that's just in the air, not seen, but felt, that has very real consequences and effects, but not hard to put your finger on sometimes. I think actually Trump is a great example of like someone that is virtuosic racist. Like,
yeah.
He like knows exactly how to say something without actually saying it, which I feel like is this great metaphor for like how racism kind of works today.
What year was this?
It's a faux pas to say, well, I guess like generally speaking, it still obviously happens, but it's more of a faux pas to say something racist now, but it's like this weird reverse version of code switching where it's like they have these codes. It's like there's definitely a code.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't think about that metaphor, but it definitely makes sense. Yeah, I thought like I didn't actually like even put together like all three tour guides were white. Like,
yeah.
I only realized until you said it, but now that I think about it, that seems a little
That's
bit
when he became
weird.
president,
I know maybe there's,
right?
you know, Black people that do them on other days. But
Yeah,
maybe not.
Exactly. But then there was also this one Black woman who she worked at one of the plantations, and she was kind of like doing kind of like a on the side little tour for some people. Cool. And a white woman comes up and says, "Oh, are you the tour guide?" She says, "No, apparently I'm not qualified." But she had also just prior to that had mentioned that her ancestors were enslaved on a plantation not too far from there. And so I could tell that she felt offended that she had to kind of like prove her qualifications to be able to be a tour guide when she is a direct descendant of the enslaved and white people get to give the tours. So yeah, I was just like, I feel you, girl. I feel your frustration.
If I went to a tour, 100%, I would want it to be a Black person.
If it was led by someone who was Black, like I felt like there was a conscious effort to very
that's the
clearly
only way
address
that they're gonna
the enslaved. I thought they made it a point to do that, which I think we both appreciated. But if it could have been from a place like that woman, I think it would have came off more authentic and more Yeah, it's
I
more
would
authentic, and I think it
never
would have
want to
been a
be
more powerful
someone who
expression of
was
what
giving those
they seem to
tours.
be trying to
It's
express.
not
Yeah.
my right.
But it definitely wasn't as whitewashed as I was maybe assuming that it was going to be.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I thought that the Destrehan tour was the most interesting
Mm-hmm.
because the woman was like older. She was like dressed into like plantation, the formal plantation garments, and she just had a theatrical performance to her presentation, which was kind of entertaining. But I mean, she did mention like the 1811 slave revolt, which I was really wondering if they were going to mention that, because at the Destrehan, that's where they had the revolt, or that's a large part of where it took place, and like that's where slaves, once they were overthrown, the enslaved were decapitated and their heads were strung along the Mississippi River as like a warning to like future revolts. And like I was really interested to see, because that's such a dark,
I didn't know that
I would say
either.
that's among the darkest,
Definitely.
experiences. And to hear her address it, I thought I was surprised that she did, but also appreciated that they are at least acknowledging the brutality of it.
Absolutely.
Really,
Absolutely.
All right. Well, is there anything else you wanted to cover that we didn't cover?
I don't like this.
No,
I feel so sick.
Cool. Yeah,
no, it's been amazing working on the show. I feel
disgusted.
very lucky to have been given the opportunity. So thank you for trusting me to be able to do this, because I know your fans are very used to your voice and
for better or for worse.
And injecting my voice in there 6 seasons in. I hope everybody enjoys the work that I do. And I hope that you're happy with the work I was able to do.
Yeah, you're doing a great job. I think it's been a great experience so far. We're not even halfway through the season, I don't think, but yeah, really excited to keep progressing it and keep working on it with you. It's been a great experience so far too, and I've been learning a lot from you. And yeah, I think we're putting together something really good this season. So yeah. And shout out to Maggie.
I wish I could make everyone watch it.
At this point, we just brought her on about a month ago, and she's helping writing some scripts, and she's doing an incredible job. So definitely shout out to her. Shout out to Mike, who put together some really great analysis outlines for us to use. Yeah, it's been great to get, Dissect started as just me and my garage basically, and just now to have each season I'm trying to grow and do something different, and having all these different voices, perspective, experiences, all talking about the same work has been really cool to kind of assimilate into these episodes. And I think it's hopefully making the show more dynamic and better, and not just me. And
yeah, I never thought that doing Dissect was easy. Like listening to it, I could tell how much work went into it, but being a part of it, it makes me realize like how much work it is to do this show, and how lucky we are to have you steering the ship.
I'm
and being able to
curious in this
consume your work.
podcast. I don't know what else to talk about.
I'm a huge fan of the show, and will continue to be a huge
like
fan of the show, and really love the work that you do. It's really important.
Yeah, appreciate that. And shout out Dope Labs, everyone. If you're not subscribed to Dope Labs yet, definitely subscribe on Spotify, wherever you listen. But yeah, well, I guess that's a good place to end. We'll probably do another one of these towards the end of the season, just to kind of recap our experience. I don't know if we can go to Louisiana again, but
let's seriously. We have to.
Yeah.
We have to.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. I think this is the first time in my life that I feel unbelievably privileged to not have known so much of that. I had no idea. I had no idea that I was even like not knowing. Wow. I hope you all know. I love you so much. You are perfect exactly the way that you are. And I hope that someday the day comes where you get to feel like the entire world sees you as exactly perfect for who you are, because that's all you guys deserve. It's unbelievable. Okay. Well, let's watch the next one. Thank you guys for watching this one with me. I will see you next time.